Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I'm your host, Monica. We are back again. New week. Not really a new topic and no new guests this week. Sorry. A lot of things have been going on. Recently, there have been 2 hurricanes in the south, and that is close to where I live. So there have been some things happening in my life that has made it a bit difficult to start up the podcast again. Not too difficult, just a little challenging. That's all. We will be having new episodes coming soon with new guests and some interviews, I promise. But this week we have a little fun thing where it's basically like a compilation episode. And essentially what I did is I picked some favorite moments from past episodes with some of my favorite guests and some interesting takes or some hot takes from past episodes. And I've compiled them all together in this sweet little episode for you all. So I hope you all enjoy. I hope you all watch. Let me know what you think. If there are other moments from other guests that you really loved and really enjoyed and you want us to introduce or include in a future episode, let us know. And that's about it. Thanks again, guys, for listening. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Follow us on all our social media. I've been meaning to watch that. And don't forget to tell your friends and family about your new favorite podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys listen. Have a great day.
Oh, question. Do you think that the second movie is better than the first one?
I would have to say yes. Because oftentimes when a sequel comes out, I feel like there are times when you watch a movie and the first movie, phenomenal, amazing, stellar. You lay the groundwork down. We know who the characters are. We know what the story is. We're invested. We're interested in it. We want another movie. We want another one. Oftentimes the sequel can be better than what the original movie was, which is what you want. You want the story to get better. You want it to improve. You want the characters to do new things, to try new things, and embrace new challenges. Or it doesn't do as good. If the first movie is better than your sequel, then you have failed the first movie. It's the same thing with TV shows. Your first season needs, it has to be good. And then your second season has to be so great. It has to be. Because what the heck did we do laying down the groundwork if the second season cannot carry the story? The only show that I've watched where the first season sucked, but the second season was amazing, from my knowledge right now, is Parks and Rec. Because the first season is not that great, but the second season is so good that when I rewatch Parks and Rec, I don't even watch the first season. Because what's the point? The second season is the first season in my eyes. The second season is the first season of Parks and Rec. There are 6 seasons of Parks and Rec, not 7. All right? That's how I feel. And that's something that I realized with The Bear, which is a show that has come out. And also other shows that I've seen. The second season is always better. The second season is always the best season. It's so good. Because you've put down the groundwork for your show. And now you're on to part 2. And you're just we got to keep this going. We got to keep the people wanting more. The expectation has been set. You must meet the expectation. And you must exceed it. Girl, that's it. That's it. That's all you can do. And honestly, the only show that I watch where every season is good and every season is great, the only show I've watched recently is What We Do in the Shadows. I love that show so much. Oh my gosh. And the one show that I've watched that was first good season, second season, and the rest of the seasons aren't that great, Succession. Listen, I don't know why it's still getting Emmys. I like the show. I like the actors. The writing is good. I'll give you that. But there's more. There are so many more shows on TV.
It might be a
the only network that should get Emmys. Okay, Interview with the Vampire exists.
Yeah, it might be the sort of thing where Kobe Bryant used to get all defensive team selections, not because he was a good defender, but because he used to be a good defender. Be who's a good defender? Oh yeah, Kobe, and they would vote for him.
I think that I saw a lot of that sentiment around the film, and I saw a lot of like my mutuals on TikTok and on Twitter praise the film highly. And a lot of people said
Hmm.
that this was like almost the movie for people who liked weird Barbie. So I kind of went
Hmm.
in with that in mind. And me personally, I always do enjoy coming of age movies. And because I already like Emma Stone and I already love Yorgos Lanthimos, I figured like when I go into this film, I'm going to enjoy it. And to my surprise, I got through the movie, and I think I got to the part where um, Abella meets Gerard Carmichael's character, and that's when I get to the point where like I don't know if I'm enjoying this movie, you know,
Hmm.
because for me, one thing that I find that happens a lot with coming of age films for young women is that they come to the actualization of their womanhood through sex. And it's not that that is a bad thing. I just feel like it's something that is utilized a bit too much, I guess I should say. And for me, like to see like that this is a Yorgos Lanthimos film. This is a female-led character, and he's done something like this before with like The Lobster, and also The Favorite as well. So it's not out of the realm of his filmography. But I think that for me personally, I was looking for something else in the movie, and I did not get that. And
Hmm.
I do find it derivative in the path of womanhood and actualization and a woman coming into her own that she must not rely on her sexuality, but like sexuality is such a big part of it that her like discovering herself and her masturbating is what she feels like a woman, you know. And I also had this critique with Rami season 1 because in Rami it follows his life. It's kind of like a mirror of Rami Youssef's life as like a Muslim
Hmm.
American. And there are two episodes in season 1 that focus on the actress who plays his sister and the actress who plays his mom. And both of those episodes, like his sister likes a white guy and wants to sleep with him. And his mom has a crush on somebody and wants to sleep with that man. And when she doesn't get to, she just sleeps with her husband. And I found it annoying that like, why is it that the only episodes you have centered around these female characters in your show, the only desire they have is sex, you know, and they don't have
Hmm.
any other desires outside of that. Like your sister is in medical school, we can't talk about her ambitions. Like that's your mom, and like it's not weird for moms to want to have sex. They want to have sex. That's fine, but why is it that your female character you only put her in a situation where like she is vying for that desire and not something else? So I think that's something that like I thought about when I was watching the film, and I think I was trying to have an open mind, you know, while watching the movie and be like, it's okay, it's
Hmm.
fine, just like try and see it from a different perspective. Like don't try to see it from your own experience only. But as someone who was like raised, I guess, very prudish, you know, and raised religious, um, to have to like watch films to understand certain parts of yourself, and a lot of films around coming of age for women do tend around sex and relationship and like romance. And as someone who is not like a huge participant in those kind of things, it's hard to find
Hmm.
things that you can relate to. So when Weird Barbie movie came out, I'm like, okay, maybe she's a little quirky. Maybe she's like into like weird stuff. And like, I love that she loved reading. I love that she was introduced into socialism and Marxism. Like, that's interesting.
Hmm.
That's really cool. It's amazing. But it got to the point near the end of the film where, you know, um, Mark Ruffalo's character, Wetterberg, and Bella, they've lost all their money and she has to figure out a way to find more money. And she goes to the option of like the brothel. And
Hmm.
I'm watching the movie, I'm like, doesn't she have a stack from her dad? And in my head, I'm thinking, like, okay, I understand this is an exploration of yourself and womanhood and sexuality. You want to explore sex and like what is it like having sex with different men and like what they desire, what they look like, and like it's looking at that as experiment. But also in my head, I'm like, a lot of women turn to sex work when they have nowhere else to go. You obviously have the option of using the money that your father lent to you, but because Wetterberg took that money from her and basically ran off, she has no other option but to go to this brothel. And I understand, like, in the brothel, she also learns about, like, um, femininity and, like, presenting yourself and being a woman and, like, all those things. And that's where she meets one of my favorite characters in the movie who teaches her about socialism. And I think that's really great. And I was just watching the movie and I was just like, there was a different path that we could have gone down for her at this point in the film. And I felt like her exploring her sexuality as a way of her learning more about what it's like to be a woman, I felt like that was something that is done a lot. And I also feel like men, when they write stories about women and it's like a coming of age film, a film about actualization, they always turn to that because men can don't I don't know how to say this. Men don't understand women except the fact that women want to have sex because men want to have sex too. And they don't know what else women want. And if women want to have
Right.
sex and men want to have sex, then let's just explore sex because sex is easy, and it sells. And I was trying to think like maybe this isn't what I'm seeing. But then I did watch a couple other TikToks and I saw that other people were seeing the same thing. And I was like, okay, thank God. I'm not crazy. I'm not a prude. That's
Yeah,
just
that
what
was a
I
very
saw.
common it was a very common criticism. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
I will say like I don't um having kind of like gone back and watched it again, the sex the sex is the shiny thing that gets her to leave the house and begin on her journey. She, of course, she has a lot more sex as she goes. And again,
Uh,
like I get how like that many sex scenes in general can just be off-putting to some people, and people will be like, "It's not my thing. I don't want to see Emma Stone's tits that many times, no matter how pretty she is."
yeah.
Totally get that. That is a taste thing. I do think sex is like the shiny thing that makes her leave her sex and mystery. She like wants to uh she wanted to see the world anyway. Duncan Wetterberg is offering her both of those things. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll fuck you and I'll take you somewhere. And she's like, all right, this is like the shiny thing that's going to get me outside. Her self actualization really starts to begin on the boat when
Mm-hmm.
she starts to read and she discovers her mind and ideas. Like
Yeah.
she has, and she discovers that her passion for ideas is much is much stronger than her passion for sex. The There's a lot of needles that are I think very finely like threaded. Other people might disagree with me. One of those needles is Emma Stone's acting, because I personally, I mean, I don't suffer from any cognitive disabilities, but I think she managed to do the baby to adult like growth in a way that didn't really come across as like offensive.
Yeah.
I think other like if anybody watching this is like part of the community and has like cognitive disabilities and disagrees with me, please sound off and tell me I'm wrong. But
Uh-huh.
it felt to me like she had her work cut out for her, and I think she threaded that needle quite well. I honestly think the her Bella's entry into sex work is another area, because we've actually seen that scene so many times. The one where like the woman becomes a sex worker because she has to.
Yeah.
And she that first encounter, she's crying, and it's unbearable, and we as the audience are meant to weep for her. And then we get to see the montage of her having sex, and we get to see her slowly die inside, and I'm so fucking tired of that. What they do is subvert that entirely. The first sexual encounter she has, because she's like, wait, I can have sex and I can make money, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then he thrusts 3 times, comes, and she has to stifle a laugh because she's like, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes and tells Duncan Wetterberg, like, I stifled a laugh because it was so bad. So I
Yeah.
guess you're right. You are really good at sex. And then and then we get to see the montage of working as a sex worker, and the experiences are all over the place. Like some of
Mm-hmm.
them are not great, but she never like it never feels coerced. It feels like a job, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is what the movie, specifically when she says the line like "we are the means of our own means of production." The movie is using sex work like to be like, hey, this is just another way of like selling your body for like we're all selling our bodies as labor. um so it's just a job. And I like that it shows like the joys and also the kind of like boredom and the negotiations for higher wages that come with that within the lens of like sex work. I like for a movie that I like immediately like my asshole clenched and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch a whole bunch of men try to take advantage of this woman for
Mm-hmm.
2 hours. I was really refreshed by like how not in danger I felt she was for
Mm-hmm.
that entire time, like
Yeah.
how capable I felt she was, and like how like again I was stressed out the first time I saw it, the
Mm-hmm.
second time not so much. But yeah, I would like I found that the movie very often approached these like very familiar tropes,
Mm-hmm.
and like some of them subverted and then some of them maybe just like came at from like a different angle and
Right.
delved deeper in a way that I found was satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And also I understand why it's like not for I understand why every Yorgos Lanthimos movie is not for everyone, but
Yeah.
I understand why this one in particular sparked some discourse, you know.
And I don't know how many people notice, but when the phone rings in the opening sequence of Fear Street 1994, it's actually the exact same soundbite from the Scream movie. Like that ringtone is exactly the same.
Seriously?
Yeah, hold on.
Damn.
I can actually play it for you. One sec. Wait, I'm dying. This is so funny.
That is actually
Let me
so
see.
cool. I didn't know that.
It's exactly the same. Hold on. I might blow my speaker, but let's see. It's just. You hear that?
Oh my
That's
gosh,
Scream.
you're right.
That's
Yes?
Scream. And then if
Uh-huh.
I go.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It's the
Oh,
exact same ringtone.
yes. Yes, it
Exactly the same.
is. Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
I love like those little details, and that's one of the
Uh-huh.
reasons why I love this opening scene so much, because it's just like boiling and bubbling and brimming with all of these little details. Like that's one of the reasons why I think it's so good. And I
Mm-hmm.
love how they start with that, because I feel like a lot of horror movies can fall into these regular tropes, and a lot of the times we're watching it and we're like, oh, like we clock it immediately, like oh, they're pulling from that movie or they're copying that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when they start and they do like a respectful homage to the genre or to the predecessors in the genre, it kind of makes the viewers or the audience or the fans be like, oh, like, they have permission to go and play with the rest of the film in a sense. It doesn't feel like it's a cheap, like a copy of what they're doing in something like Scream. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I love it so much. They do it in like a respectful, fun way, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, now I'm gonna spin it even more, because even when she's on the phone, spoiler alert for anybody that has not seen the film, but by the end of the movie, obviously we know what's going on with the curse and the witch, and when she's on the phone with her friend Ryan, it just begs the question, because in the original Scream movie, Casey doesn't know that she's on the phone with the killer,
Mm-hmm.
and Maya Hawke's character Heather also doesn't know that she's on the phone with the killer when Ryan calls.
Mm-hmm.
And because he gets possessed, like at some point in this opening scene, we don't even know if he knows that he's the killer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like a fun little twist, and I love that so much. It's one of the reasons why this stands out to me, because they do the same thing that they do in Scream, but they twist it a little bit by adding in the possession.
First of all, I'm not really a fan of Spike Lee unless he's in his element. He's really good when he is in Brooklyn, like in Do the Right Thing and like in Crooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Except I really love Crooklyn's story. But I don't know, Do the Right Thing was fine. It was, and I might be suffering from like seeing a movie that was so influential years and years and years after it was influential. And
Yeah.
so you have seen so many movies since then that have directly copied it. And
Hmm.
so there's not that initial, oh my gosh, thing that happened when it first came out, of course. Um, but like even the politics were a little bit off for me. Um,
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of white people saying the N word. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that. It's which is funny because he kind of has the beef with Quentin Tarantino
yeah.
because he puts the N word in his movie. Yeah,
I think
they're interesting.
I think that I completely agree with you. Um, in regards to his treatment with women in his films, that's why I want to talk about She's Gotta Have It, because
Yeah,
Nola Darling is a lot like Spike Lee, where he is a free spirited artist. So he kind of sees himself in Nola. I liked She's Gotta Have It. It was definitely different from other movies I've seen and other films I've watched about romance. And I love Nola and her story. I don't like how the men in her life did not see and understand that she is openly polyamorous, and her wanting
yeah,
to be with them and her openly expressing her interest in all three of them is her, just being like, hey, I'm dating all three of you. I want you to know, like, trying to make it plain because men will have two
yeah,
different families and nobody will know
yeah,
until the guy dies.
yeah,
And it's worse with Jamie, who's supposedly the nice guy, the good guy, who I love that Spike Lee did this. He shows a scene where Jamie goes up to Nola and he's like, I was scared I was never going to see you again. Can I take you out? Or something like that. And then right after that scene, we see Nola leave her apartment and Jamie just follows her. Like he's just following
yeah,
her in the street. So it gives you context to that. Even though Jamie loves Nola, he sees her as a possession. He sees
yeah,
her as a plaything. And Jamie says in the beginning of the film, everyone has one soulmate. Everyone should be with one person, which is then solidified in how
yeah,
he violates her in the film. And then
yeah,
they don't work out, which they weren't going to in the beginning, because like she's not a monogamous person. But and also he's homophobic too. Like he's rude to her friend Opal, who is so gorgeous in the movie and in the show. But
Did you like the show, by the way?
I tried. I
I
loved the
saw one
Wanda.
episode, so I'm not qualified.
Oh, I saw the first season. Like I truly did give it my best, and I love DeWanda Wise so much. I do, but the show has Nola Darling and has the same men and the same names. Um, I feel like it kind of tried to capture the same spirit of the movie, but there's a scene where she's frolicking in a graveyard of like black greats who have died. So it's like, girl, what are we doing? And also, she has a friend that gets a BBL that explodes on stage. So it's like, why did that happen? Yes, Spike Lee just like it's like
Are
I
you
see the.
serious?
I'm serious, and Fat Joe's in the show. Like Fat Joe, I'm all the way up is in the show. Yesterday's price is not today's price is in the show.
That's interesting that he had a BBL blow up on stage.
I don't know if it shows on the show because I covered my eyes because I was like, oh, I know where this is going, and I'm not
Oh,
witnessing this. But it's very much like he tries to make a commentary, he tries to make a point on some things, and it's like, you don't have the knowledge and the know how to make this point,
yeah,
sir.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the nipples thing from Do the Right Thing, and I feel like I would
It's
have
in the
remembered that.
beginning.
Okay. I feel like I would have remembered that.
I don't know. She talks about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know why I didn't know that because, like, Do the Right Thing is one of my favorite movies. I do agree with you when you say like
Really?
it's pretty average because I saw it when I was very young, so I
Oh, I'm
didn't.
not saying it's average. I don't want that sound bite. Teresa is not saying that Do the Right Thing is average. Absolutely not. I do recognize it as a technical triumph. I absolutely do.
Mm-hmm.
It just, by the time I saw it, it was kind of like, it's like introducing the Matrix to a Gen Zer right now.
Yeah.
Are you a Gen Zer? Have
Yes.
you seen the first
I
Matrix?
have.
Yeah, I feel like, if you were to see it today, it would be like, oh, okay, this is cool. But everyone has copied it. Everyone has copied the Matrix. It's just like it's cliche at this point for someone with special powers to evade a bullet in slow motion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when we saw it, it was like, wow, this is the
Yeah.
greatest thing of all time. So,
It's like Star Wars.
yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
yeah.
I can't. So, it suffers from whatever that phenomenon is for me.
Yeah.
And the fact that Spike Lee is, oh God, I have trouble with him.
I do love Spike Lee as a director, but it's very clear where he rises and where he falls. Like Black Klansman was a really good film that he directed recently that I did enjoy. Um, you know, we can all have our criticisms about the film Black Klansman, and like I can't think of mine right now, but I feel like that's one of the films where like it's something different, but it's still in its element, and it still kind of works, like it fits. You know what I mean?
I hated that movie.
Oh,
I
you
really
hated
did.
it?
I hated it. I saw it with my mom. What time is it? Jesus. Okay. Well, I have to say this. I saw it with my mom,
Uh huh.
and we were just like, and we would just turn to look at each other like every 10 minutes. It was
Oh.
so heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
It was so, in my opinion, poorly acted.
Oh.
Um, it was just
Oh, you don't like John David
bizarre. It
Washington?
was bizarre. No, I think it was terrible. I think it was terrible. Embarrassingly so. I'm sorry. I know.
You're gonna say that
I
about
know.
Denzel Washington's son?
I have to say that somebody else was sitting next to me so I don't seem crazy because I know that everybody loves this movie. Okay?
I didn't say I love the movie. I said it's a good movie.
Girl, I can't. I cannot do it. It was so bizarrely bad to me that like I talked to my mom about it. We walked around the theater talking about it for half an hour. It was insane.
Spike Lee is a pretty good director. I mean, I at least, he is one of the most well known and iconic directors, and also, namely, one of the only black directors that people can name. So he kind of stands out in that regard. But
Mhm.
one thing about Spike Lee's films is that they do have something to say, and he is genuinely, wholeheartedly invested in what his films have to say. And as much as I love Spike Lee, there are some things that I don't like about his films. Maybe like the treatment of women in his films, or how they are structured, how sometimes they're written, how sometimes the message is a little heavy-handed, like other people have said. And also,
Yeah.
I think one thing that people don't know about Spike Lee is that like he apparently had a deal with like the NYPD at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like he
For the Klansman movie?
no, not for the Klansman movie. He was paid $200,000 for consulting on an ad campaign for the NYPD.
Really?
And he's like one of the people who have been most outspoken about the New York Police Department, of course.
Yeah.
But he was paid a lot of money to help. He was approached by their foundation and consulted several creative teams. No, I think it's the other way around. Basically, what was it? Frick, sorry.
That's okay.
No, it was basically reported on the NYPD's taxes. There were several creative and consulting groups they reached out to in regards to ad campaigns to help the NYPD's image, and Spike Lee's agency was one of those. That's what happened.
I would not be surprised. That does not surprise me at all. Like at all.
Why would you say that?
He seems like, yes, he has his political beliefs, but I've met people like him before, namely men, who tend to be very narcissistic.
Hmm.
Um, and more than their personal beliefs, they feel like they were cheated in life because um, they should be they should have more influence than they actually have. So when they have an opportunity to get that influence, they jump at the chance, and principles really fall by the wayside.
Yeah,
I can even see that in his movies. His
mm-hmm.
politics are sometimes all over the place. And it seems like sometimes it's like what comes through is the butthurtness, not the, let's what am I trying to say? Not unionize. Let's what I had a brain fart. Let's gather together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's less um, you know, everybody should be on the same page so that we can get to the revolution, and more like I'm upset about something in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I'm just not surprised.
I have to say, there is one movie that came out, I think 2018 or 2019, that is very similar to your thoughts on Spike Lee, him being a narcissist, and that was Sorry to Bother You, directed by Boots Riley. And
Hmm.
I remember watching that movie, and I really did like that movie. I found out like a few years later that a lot of people thought the movie was terrible, and I did not know that. What I did know is that I didn't like Tessa Thompson's I like Tessa Thompson's character. I just didn't like how they did her character in the film because
Yeah.
she's very much this outspoken, um, very pro-black activist, and she kind of jumps around from job to job in the same way that Cassius Green does as well. And at one point, she breaks up with Cassius because she feels like he has become too politically aligned with the people that she is against. So she starts dating Steve Yeun, who is so gorgeous. And, good for you, girl. You should be with Steve Yeun. But by the end of the movie, they get back together, which I don't understand why,
Yeah.
because it doesn't really make sense. Like Steve Yeun in his character and Tessa Thompson's character in the film seem more politically and romantically aligned together, and it just kind of felt like she was dating Cassius Green because he was just kind of like there, and they've been
Yeah.
together for a while. So it's just like I can't really dump him because I'm comfortable in this relationship in this situation.
Yeah.
Like you want to be back together with him now that he wants to like burn down this company now that he's gotten a little bit too deep into it. Like I don't know about that. And
Yeah.
Boots Riley, a lot of black women like had very fair critiques on Sorry to Bother You on Twitter, and he just started like arguing with people online. It's like, sir, maybe just read the article and just see what they have to say, because like, you know,
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, anti-blackness challenges a black man's manhood, right? Of course it
mm-hmm,
does, because we're not people. Um, and their manhood is something that they hold on to very, very tightly
mm-hmm,
because it's all they have, even though they really don't have it. Um, and so, yeah, I find that they make those artistic choices a lot.
mm-hmm,
The women in their movies, even if it's a political movie about how we should, be all black people should be aligned and we should be equal and all that kind of stuff. Women are just kind of used to validate them. Um, and I think that's how Tessa Thompson was used. She's kind of she's still black,
mm-hmm.
but she's light skinned, which is shorthand for beautiful. So she's this light skinned, like alternative, quirky, artsy girl.
Mm-hmm.
He can't just let her go to some other, you know what I mean? He has to have her at the end. He has to possess her.
Yeah.
So, I'm just like not impressed ever with the movies that these men make. Most of the time, it just comes down to them validating their own manhood that society won't let them have, but is like the most important thing to them ever.
Mhm.
It's a really that 15 million merits episode. That got me into Black Mirror. One of my friends
Yeah.
suggested Black Mirror, and actually it was after season 3 came out, and so I had a list of season 3, season 1, season 2. They were like, start with 15 million merits or Nosedive was the two recommendations.
Mhm.
They said not to go to the entire history of you first. That was, which I think that's in the third episode of the first season. That one is a lot, like seeing your partner and seeing everything through their eye lenses was like a crazy, weird, jarring, sad episode, but it was very brilliantly done. You're right. The first season is just such a brilliant start, and I gotta be honest, I think the second season doesn't follow it up well, but every other season has been pretty good. But that first season, like you said, 15 million merits and the entire history of you, such strong episodes. And what I just love about this show as a whole is, and I know Twilight Zone has done it,
Mhm.
it it just has these self-contained episodes that truly feel self-contained. Like there's a couple of episodes, I think maybe White Christmas, where there's a couple of Easter eggs and things like that. But it really does feel like every episode you're getting an entirely new story. There's really not a lot of connection between these, and they feel so. There are a couple of similarities, but they feel so unique and distinct. Even Bandersnatch, the interactive film, was so different from the rest of the Black Mirror library that every single Black Mirror episode feels like an experience. It feels new. It feels fresh every episode, at least for me. Like that's just in my
Mhm.
opinion, but it presents itself very well because it does explore themes of society, uh, social commentaries, technology, and now we get to the new season, we get horror, and I think there's a way to play with some other genres and include this here. I mean, San Junipero being maybe the happiest episode of Black Mirror there is.
Yeah.
There's ways to incorporate different elements into this writing, and I think if there is a season 7, we're going to see some differences like we saw in season 6 here. And they did the Star Trek episode very sci-fi heavy, so you can just
Mhm.
explore so many genres. I'm sure there's a superhero episode coming. We got to have some kind of Marvel DC superhero movie themed episode on the way somehow. But then it's gonna be hard to dance on that because you got The Boys, which is an entire commentary on the nature of superheroes in reality. But
Mhm.
hey, I would love to see how Black Mirror does it. I mean, it's not like we haven't seen a superhero in reality show before, like Heroes, which started off amazingly and kind of tumbled off a hill after that. But
Mhm.
I think Black Mirror, what it could continue on to be, is it could start incorporating other genres. So action, thriller, horror, like explore other genres and go with that. There's the season 5 episode that was like the dating app, or that might have been season 4. I think that was,
Yeah,
oh,
season
Hang the
4,
DJ. That
Hang the
was season
DJ.
4.
Mhm.
Yep, that was such a great episode, and it's not action packed. It's very drama heavy. So incorporate as many elements as you like. I think they could pump out 3, 4 more seasons of this, and I'll be happy.
There's a lot of directors that try to say something in their movies, that
Oh yeah,
try to make a statement, and they say nothing. Or they try to
yeah.
make a statement about every little thing, and there's too much being said. Like, you're trying to
Well,
hit
there's
every point.
it's that the new trend of the social horror that Jordan Peele does it great, but
Yeah.
then so many people try to duplicate stuff like Get
Oh
Out,
my
and it
god.
just does not work. I think
Hmm.
about this Amazon film Master, where I was just so excited to see this, and it just like failed. It was just kind of like it was
Oh
a very
wait, was
like
that the movie with
yeah,
Regina Hall?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
oh, I've been meaning to watch that movie. It was
I was very disappointed. I was like so
ah.
excited to see this, and it just sort of doesn't really like it doesn't balance enough of the social and enough of the horror, so it just kind of
Uh-huh.
fails. And I love that Jordan Peele's last film, where it's about aliens, and people are like, "Oh, so this is going to be like a message on immigration and a message on." No, it was a message about filmmaking. Like the guy decided to do an introspective movie that just like dives deep into his own insecurities and soul. And I was like, "You go, Jordan Peele. You don't always have to be like the good old advocate. You can just do your
Yeah.
own thing." I love
Yeah.
that. I loved that he did that.
I kind of thought when you said Amazon and brought up Jordan Peele, I thought we were going to talk about the show Them.
Oh boy, yeah, that. Oh.
You
So
remember
first
that
of
show?
all, I watched the first season not knowing there's a second season, and now the second season apparently is on MGM Plus.
Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
it is not worth me buying another subscribership to actually
What's
grab that
MGM
guy.
Plus?
Exactly.
Oh my
It's like it's when Amazon bought like MGM, and I guess they're still making a separate streaming service for that,
Why?
which I have no idea.
Why?
And that was a rough one, man. That's an example of that social horror stuff that just does not work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, this and then, like and Lena Waithe was behind it, but then it was like a Lena Waithe presents. So
Mm-hmm.
like she didn't have a lot to do with it, but it's just like, oh man, all of that was just such a disappointment.
Yeah, I had never watched. I remember when the poster for Them was kind of just shown on Twitter, and then like so many people were just like, absolutely not. You ripped off Jordan Peele. Like this is not something we're gonna watch. We're not gonna accept this. And the thing that sucks the most is that like seeing that show Them being like released, I was just kind of like, okay, you had to know what you were doing. Like
Yeah.
it's so clearly like we're not gonna say plagiarism, but it's like the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
It's the
then
same style.
it's the same style, and it's kind of like this black family that moves into this all white neighborhood during this da 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 blah 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 blah. Literally
Yeah.
like copy and paste, copy and paste. What are we doing? What are we doing? And the show. I didn't watch the show, and I just watched a bunch of reviews on it, just to, like get other people's opinion. And there was one person who had made a YouTube video about it, and they said that like there was a lot of graphic scenes in it, and there's a lot, like bloody, gory stuff in there. They did bring up certain topics that like aren't discussed a lot in other shows, like I guess male unaliving themselves. And it was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
yeah. And I was kind of like, okay, I mean, it's great that they brought up that in the
Yeah.
show, but it's not enough for me to watch this show. Like,
Yeah.
it's not enough for me to actually like put my butt in the seat and commit to seeing this. Because if you're going to make something, oh my gosh, why? Like in my head, I'm thinking in my head like what it takes to create a television show, and then to create a concept and an idea, and then completely like almost rip it off of someone else's work, just to try
Yeah.
and like do what and say what exactly, and then fail at saying what you wanted to say. Like, what was the purpose? What was the point? Lena Waithe, we expected so much more from you, girl. Like, you won an Emmy and then this. What happened?
She made the best episode of an amazing show in Master of None with that Thanksgiving episode. And then it's just where'd you go from there?
What-
Come on.
Come on. Like, we had such
So
high hopes
good.
for you, and don't say I was wrong. Don't say that. Come on, girl. Let's like first this show, and then Queen and Slim, and now what?
Oh, Queen and Slim. Oh my god, I forgot about that one.
You forgot about the phenomenal film where there are two people making love while someone is being killed by the police. How could
That
you
was a
forget?
very strange moment. Yeah, that now that I'm thinking about it, that was a tough thing to forget. When I like that was
The worst
terrifying.
the worst reiteration of Bonnie and Clyde I've ever seen in my
Yeah.
life. Like, here is a movie with two actors that I love so dearly and I want to see win so badly. But when I watch this movie, I now have to question, like, when you read this script, what made you say yes? I need to know what exact scene you read and you were like, this is why I want to be in the movie. To make that
Yeah.
happen on screen. Like, please
boy.
explain it to me so I can see what you see. Because I don't see it. But we don't have to have that problem with Guillermo's movie.
No, thankfully he tastefully does his political comparisons. They are just simply settings.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like. They're just simply settings, and we don't have to go any further with it. And I like that where there's no real messages shoved down your throat. The The messages are the stories that the people go through, and the characters that are there, and the love between those characters, or the hate between those characters. And I think that's way more important than, trying to like give this overarching message. A message usually I probably agree with. Hey, fascism, bad.
Yeah.
But like I'd rather see the experience of someone dealing with that instead of, that overarching theme.
And I like that most of his films have any kind of like political event as like the backdrop of the movie, because that's kind of like how our lives have become. Where
Yeah.
any single thing you're experiencing, there is some strange political event happening in the back.
At that very moment, yes.
Yes. Like right now, there are kids graduating from college and high school. And right now, in many southern states, there are trans kids fighting for their lives just to exist, just to be able to like live their lives. Like
Such scary shit. Such scary shit.
It's just right there in your face. And also, I like that he does not shy away from that, because there are plenty of filmmakers that don't want to get too political, or they're excited to get political, but not take like a true stand on like what
the
they're
message
trying to say.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the scene itself is so fascinating because I think it covers like a couple of things. One is the major theme of like, what does it mean to separate the art from the artist, and can you do that both in the past and in the present? And I think it also tackles just what it means for Lydia of being a conductor is like, and what the music industry is like, of constantly that you must
Adapt and change.
well, yeah, and that you have to like submerge yourself in the artist's work, that uh you have to like exalt yourself to the artist's work, and that you also must be willing to like have these extremely challenging discussions, that you have to be willing to be extremely direct and extremely, in some cases extremely cruel, to get the results that you want. And that is so much of what Tar is. It's about what power does to people and the way that power makes you act. And so here she is in this classroom, like extremely renowned, with all of these children. Practically they're all probably like 18 to 20, and here she is basically making them squirm by being like, by challenging their notion that like, because Beethoven lived like maybe a shady personal life, that his art is now should be rendered meaningless in the present. But to Tar, like, that's kind of immaterial, and that it's like a sign of weakness if someone does think that that is material. And I think that's sometimes a lot in the art world. Like, I'm in theater, but certainly when it comes to some ways that people do classic productions, when people think about different, like, does the personal life of the author, does that inform the way we view the art? Some people are like, who cares, just like look at the art the way that it is. Yeah, it's just like it's a really fascinating scene. In some ways I kind of cringe, because the guy that she's talking to, who's like, who literally calls himself like a BIPOC pangender, like something that like a real person would never truly describe themselves, I think. But as just like a token of today's concerns about, I guess, what we would call cancel culture. Both like a diatribe against it, but also like, that's a scene where you can totally interpret her being absolutely wrong or her being absolutely right, which I think is something that I really enjoy about the film.
Yeah, when he described himself as like BIPOC pangendered, I was like, ooh, the white man jumped out.
Right, like, okay, like an actual like BIPOC pangender person would never call themselves that.
He probably would have just said like, yeah, it's like, he probably said something like, oh, I don't really listen to Bach. You know, he was kind of a misogynist, so he's not really my favorite. And like say something like, I'm into blah
Right.
blah blah and blah blah blah. And
Mm-hmm.
it's clear that this scene is obviously meant to be kind of open to interpretation, but also revealing to us who Lydia Tarr is. Someone who like kind of just speaks her mind. And she literally
Right.
like eviscerates Max in front of
Totally
like
eviscerates.
yeah, in front of his peers.
Right.
And not only that, you are literally watching someone who like looks up to and idolizes Tar and sees
Mm-hmm.
her as someone who is phenomenal and amazing and talented. And to have her completely like just destroy him in front of like all his friends, you see how quickly that you see how quickly the like pedestal he put her on just crashes to the ground. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even like I like the camera like kind of focuses in on like his nervous tick and just like how
Right.
he kind of talks to the ground, and her literally like putting her hand on his leg and like pushing it down is her like her positioning herself as a control
Right.
freak. Like you're just here
Absolutely.
to like kind of just lead a class and like you're supposed to teach them how
Yeah.
to conduct. And now
Right.
here we go in this like 10-minute lecture on like your personal
Yes.
beliefs and like what's wrong with this generation. Her literally
Right.
saying something like the architect of your soul is social media, and
Yeah.
also just kind of like bringing them down. And
Mm-hmm.
it's this, you know, obviously the older generation putting down the newer generation, and you want to pull the example of like, oh well, you definitely had. She has like others. There are other scenes in the movie where she is put in that same situation, where people of an older generation are kind of putting her down almost, when she talks about how like we should have more female conductors, and
Mm-hmm.
she finds out that one of the people she works for is probably a Nazi. Like
Yeah.
she has to confront the fact that like the people that she admires and knows are not great people as well, and how they disappoint them. And obviously the scene is meant to bring a lot of shock value to the movie and draw people in. And a lot of people have talked about how this scene was the solidifier for her being nominated for an Academy Award, because I could tell like the Academy voters ate this scene up. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this now this scene, this is what I like to see. They like related to that so heavily. And
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I was gonna say something else, but I completely blanked. I completely blanked. But oh, I was gonna say like I love the movie as a whole, but this is definitely one of those scenes where I was watching it and I was like, this scene has absolutely been taken out of context from the
Mm-hmm.
film and been reposted on some conservative social media site for people to praise and revere and love. And
Yeah. Well, I think again, this is what I think is kind of brilliant about the scene, because you can totally approach it from, wow, Lydia Tarr is speaking so much truth about
mm-hmm,
how like art deserves its own i- its own study and recognition aside from the artist, and that like as she says that you must like ex- exalt yourself in the artist,
yeah,
and how important that is. And you can also just read that scene and be like, Lydia Tarr is so full of shit, she is just saying gobbledygook,
mm-hmm,
to like, own these woke teens,
yeah,
um and isn't actually saying anything meaningful.
mm-hmm,
um because I do think that this scene does stand out in the movie,
mm-hmm,
um uh and it's the only time, and I'm like, well, I don't know if like people would actually like say these things, but I do think it does speak to how we get a handle on s- something super important to Tar, which is that like what the artist's biography is is secondary to respecting the art that they do,
yeah,
um and that it is your job as an artist to always like sublimate yourself into the art.
mm-hmm. That's very true. And um I actually like took notes on some of the things she said during her whole like soliloquy to Max, and she said
Mm-hmm.
something that like struck out to me because like she literally kind of like scoffs at his gender identity, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
say like the way he said it is
Right.
so, it reads as like conservative influencer mocking blue-haired liberals. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yes.
fake, it's not genuine. Nobody who is like queer really talks like that. And if
Right.
they do, just ignore them. Please. It's like that video.
Totally.
I don't know if you've ever seen that video. There is this guy in the subway who has a do rag on, and he's talking to this white person who is queer, and they try and be like, oh, well, I'm queer, and I'm also like part Mexican, and they try to like list all these parts of their identity because they live in Brooklyn, and they're trying to identify why they live in Brooklyn because the person with the mic, the black person, like basically called them like a gentrifier. And the way that Max kind of talks reminds me of someone like that, like someone who is lacks self-awareness and is so annoying. And like you get
Right.
one clip of somebody like that, and then
Yeah.
someone like Steve Crowder just runs with it
Mm-hmm.
to his 30,000
Totally.
subscribers. And
Right.
watching this scene and her saying this phrase like don't be so eager to be offended just speaks to me on how
Yes.
like young people are so sensitive and they're so quick
Right.
to be triggered, and
Right.
they lack thick skin, and they're
Yeah.
not like, you know, tough. It's because they get all these participation trophies and da da da
Yeah.
da, all this stuff that people don't like about like the younger generation. And
Yeah.
really, like, you, older people spend so much time putting down the younger generation when you need to be talking to your own fellow peers and the people in
Mm-hmm.
your generation because they're the ones who raised us. They're the ones
Well,
who brought us up. Like,
well, to me, this is something again that I think is interesting about the film because
mm-hmm,
there are so many people who do eventually who are either in Lydia Tarr's age group, in her
mm-hmm,
sphere, in her circle, who are telling her who clearly know a lot of these ethically dubious things that she's done in the past, a lot of
yeah,
these abuses of power she's done in the past, and either they do not call her out,
mm-hmm,
they do not punish her for it, or they are afraid of her because she has more power over them.
yeah,
And so it's quite easy for her to say, well, you can separate the art from the artist. You have to sublimate yourself to the art. You must get rid of your own ego and your own thoughts about the artist. Of course she can say that because she at had never actually faced her own reckoning yet on the relationship between her personal power and her art.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because she also says in that whole monologue she has, like, the problem with enrolling herself as an ultrasonic epistemic dissident is that if Bach's talent can be reduced to his gender, birth country, religion, and sexuality, so then can yours. Which
Hmm.
I can
Hmm.
understand.
Right.
Her being a woman and being like the first conductor, she's worked so hard to get to where she
Yeah.
is, and she's fought so hard to get there. And
Right.
I can understand how she's protective of that from the hard work that she's put into the
Yeah.
place she is at right now. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, like, as we've seen in the movie, and like you said, there have been many times where she has abused her power. There have
Hmm.
been times where she has gaslit people, and she has done things to please herself, and she has been selfish and, you know, in turn at times unfaithful to her wife and just unfair to the people around her who truly take care of her and care for
Hmm.
her because she has her blinders on, and the only person she's really concerned for is her own self. So when she
Hmm.
sees someone like
Yes.
Mozart, I mean someone like Bach, who is revered and well known, and
Hmm.
people will gladly ignore like the things that he's done in his past simply because his music is so iconic and there's nothing like it. Like, he is one of the most well-known composers in the world. She wants that same treatment, she wants that same privilege. And as a woman, she's had to work hard for what she's gotten, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, like, girl, you are not a great person. Like,
Totally, totally. It's one of the most fascinating things about her as an anti-hero, which is
mm-hmm,
her capacity to never to like in those moments to never make the connection between, you know, between personal actions and art, and to constantly be self-serving, constantly only be looking out for herself and her own actions, and the consequences not hitting her until they do.
She didn't want to put people of color in her books because in that time period it was less likely that would be treated fairly, and she didn't want to have a character who is like kind, loving, supposed to be like warmed and welcomed by the readers, and then the next page they're being like anti-Semitic, you know, or they're being racist. Like she didn't want to have that in her story, so she just did without, you
So I
know.
think she said specifically too, like she didn't want to have Black characters because she didn't want to write struggle.
Yeah.
And
I,
that's just messed up.
well, I feel like I kind of understand it because it's the same with Sofia Coppola, you know,
Mhm.
in The Beguiled. So The Beguiled is a film that Sofia Coppola did, which was a remake of this film by the same name. I can't remember exactly when the original came out, but essentially The Beguiled is a film following
1971.
1971. Okay,
Hmm.
so The Beguiled is a film that follows, um, I guess a house. Wait a minute, it's like a
It's like a Union
schoolhouse.
yeah, it's like a Union soldier and who's shot, right? And then
Yeah.
on Confederate ground and then like pulled in from into a schoolhouse somehow, I think, like a girls'
Yes.
school.
A girls' school, and they're all like young, you know, little white
And it's
girls.
Clint Eastwood, right? He's the and the old one, the main actor, not the Sofia Coppola one.
Yes, the Sophia Coppola one has Colin Farrell as the Union soldier, and in the original, there is, you know, the black slave character that is in the movie, and in Sophia Coppola's version, she did not include that character simply because she did not feel that she could write to that character's effect. Like she couldn't write
Hmm.
for that character, you know, she couldn't
Hmm.
write for the character's emotions and feelings, which I can understand. If you're a writer who does not come from the same racial background as a character and you feel like you don't have the depth to really portray this person in a meaningful in screen in your movie, you just feel like it's just better if I don't do it at all, which is a safe route. And I understand that. But to your point, you know, instead of writing for people of color, you can write with people of color.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's not as hard now, seeing as
Yeah.
like there are so many writers out there as we see that are
Yep.
not white that could benefit your work, your production, especially in Bridgerton, because there's only
Yep.
one black writer on the writing team and she's only there for 3
Oh,
episodes.
is that true? I
Yeah.
didn't realize. Oops, sorry, and this is falling. Um, I didn't realize that.
She only wrote for 3 episodes in season 1. I didn't check season 2. But remember episode 4 where
Yeah,
where like
that was her.
no, she didn't write
Oh,
episode 4.
oh, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm looking this up now because that's actually a really great point, and that's not something I thought about, which is really, not great not to think about that because all of the focus I feel like is on the cast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the actors, but I wasn't even thinking about the writings, and I think that matters as well.
Yeah. And I feel like truly, you do not have to have, okay, showrunners shouldn't feel required to have a diverse writing team if you have a diverse cast, because then you could fall into the trap of tokenism. However,
Hmm.
if you are writing stories with black,
Yeah,
brown, Southeastern Asian, Middle Eastern Asian people in your cast, and you
you
want
need
to,
more writers.
yeah, and if you want to implement these actors in these roles that are originally written for white people, then you start like creating this very sanitized version of your story where it's just kind of like,
Hmm.
let's just have these characters exist, their race doesn't matter, it has no implications on what's going on, and then we're fine. And it doesn't work in Bridgerton because most of the dark skinned people in the show don't really speak that much, and you have one dark skinned character
Hmm.
who is a villain.
And this is the Duke's dad
Yeah,
that is just
terrible.
like horrible. Yeah.
terrible, terrible person at that.
And a bad father, which is another, uh, a whole other conversation about portrayals of fathers. So that's
Yeah. Also having like the one dark skinned black woman there with no man, no love interest. She's just
Lady Danbury.
Lady Danbury is just chilling.
Mm-hmm.
You have a couple movies on this list. Do you want to like list the films?
Okay.
Or
So, Beau is Afraid. Did you watch Beau is Afraid?
I haven't watched it. I actually did want to watch Beau is Afraid, because I love Ari Aster, but so many people had so many mixed reviews about it, and to be perfectly honest, I just never got around to it. I don't know if I still plan on watching it if I'm being honest, because I don't really know what it's about.
Okay. I did a video on my page about this short film called Beau. So I have like a whole playlist of Ari Aster films that I go into. And so before Hereditary and Midsommar, he had short films. One was like The Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Mm-hmm.
One was Munchausen. There's one called Beau. I think Beau was like the first one or like the second one. And Beau is about this man and he's trying to go and visit his mom. But then he goes to his door, puts his luggage down, his key is in his door. Then he's like, oh shit, I forgot something. He goes upstairs, and when he comes back down, his luggage and his keys are missing. He has no idea where this shit went. And at the end, you find out, like as the film goes on, he gets increasingly more paranoid because, like, someone breaks into his house and I think they stab him or something, or he stabs them by accident. I don't remember. And there's just like weird shit, like people yelling at him, and he just can't cope. So he ends up staying home, not going to visit his mom. And at the end, he calls his mom, and she picks up, and it's not his mom. It's a monster, and she has his key. She has his keys, and then she has a whole bunch of other sets of keys, showing that this isn't the first time it's happened. This monster has stolen his keys, preventing him from leaving the house before. And basically, Beau is Afraid is an extension of that short film. But it's very weird. It's very strange. It feels like a fever dream.
Mm.
And I see what he was trying to do, but it wasn't the best, in my opinion.
Okay. It's kind of like great idea, bad execution.
Yeah, like it was very strange. Like there was a lot of weird shit happening. It literally feels like a fever dream.
Huh.
Like when you are a kid
Yeah.
and you fall asleep on the couch and you wake up at 4 a.m. and George Lopez is playing and you're kind of delirious.
Mhm.
That's what it felt like watching the movie. And I don't know if that was his intention. If it was, great job then. You accomplished that. But if it wasn't, I don't know. It's literally about this man named Beau. And I don't remember exactly. I think his mom got sick or something, or he has to go visit his mom. And he lives in like a really poverty stricken area.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he doesn't come from poverty. His mom is the head of an advertisement company. So they have money. They make money. And he's trying to get to his mom, or I think she died or something. Something weird like that. He's trying to get to his mom's funeral, I think. And then all this weird shit happens. He starts meeting these weird people. And in the end, his mom's not dead. She kind of just faked her death so that he would come visit her.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's very, very strange. Like you should watch it and like I would love to hear your opinion on it.
Hearing you talk about this movie reminded me of like how a lot of times filmmakers, they'll make maybe one or two really good films,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, oh my god, they're so talented. Oh my gosh, look at this person. Look at this filmmaker. Look at this creator. Look at this director. Look at what they've done. And so the next movie they make, everyone automatically is like ready for the next masterpiece.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't hold up to it, it's kind of like, Oh, so I guess the next one will be better. You know?
It seems like no one said no to him. Like he just threw out ideas, and they're like,
Yeah. Of
"Let's just
course
do
it.
it.
Of course
Let's
he
just
didn't say
do
no.
it."
He made Hereditary.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But like sometimes you need to say no. Like
Yeah.
there was a scene where a Beau goes to the attic, and there's a giant dick, and it can like walk and stuff. It was very, very weird. And I was watching it and I was like, why is there a giant like
What?
talking dick in the attic?
Okay.
It was
That's
very
another.
strange.
That's another thing I don't like. Sometimes art house films they'll just throw stuff at the wall and they rely on the audience to interpret it and figure out
Yeah.
what's going on. When the creator themselves doesn't know what they're doing, they just want to be weird for weird's sake, and that sounds like weird for weird's sake. Because why would you even do that? What's the point? What's the purpose? What's the reason?